Good evening, everyone. Thank you again for joining us for another event at the Vancouver Enterprise Forum. A great event tonight, moderated by Jenny Yang, and we're going to talk about the Internet of Things and cloud computing. It's going to be a really interesting discussion and panel discussion going on. So first of all, before we start, I'd like to take a minute to thank our many sponsors that bring the event to you and help us keep the cost and ticket price to a reasonable level. Please, have a look at our screens, and we have many sponsors here tonight. I encourage you to connect, chat, and use their services where you can. If you're interested in joining us as a sponsor of the VEF, please feel free to drop your business card off with Chris at the front door. Chris would be very happy to tell you all about it, as would I. More than happy to show you what the benefits are of joining us up here. Also, one of our long-term sponsors is Simon Fraser University and the BD School of Business. I would like to invite Jeff Nahojewicz to the stage to introduce BDC, or BD School of Business. Please, thank you.
Not bad on my last name. It's pronounced Nahojewicz. So I'm the manager of graduate programs at the BD School of Business. And really thinking globally and engaging locally is the driving spirit behind SFU BD School of Business. We have 3 campuses from Surrey to Vancouver's downtown core. We have over 3,400 undergrad students and over 350 graduate students, a few of which are sitting here this evening. We have several MBA programs and graduate management programs, but the one that I'd like to highlight this evening is our Management of Technology MBA. This 24-month part-time program takes place 2 evenings a week, and it's at our downtown campus, right on Granville and Pender. And that's the outside of the building right there. And really, this program is designed for a few different categories of individuals. Number one, professionals who want to take on the business challenges facing technology firms. Secondly, individuals with an interest in innovation and entrepreneurship. And thirdly, technology professionals who want to transition really into more strategic business-focused roles. And value is really created for our students in 4 ways, in really skill development and business confidence, which comes through a customized curriculum and faculty who know how to teach technology. Through an expanded network, our students develop a close relationship with their fellow cohort members, career advancements. So it certainly this program has a proven track record of accelerating the advancement of our students' careers, and recognition and credibility. So being a well-recognized MBA program from a well-recognized university certainly speaks volumes to that. And finally, the last point I want to make is, this really, it's a specialized MBA. It's not an MBA with a specialization. Although it's tech-focused throughout, at the end of the day, you do leave with an MBA that's cross-functional no matter what you want to do. So my colleague Dave and I will be outside after the speakers tonight. So we'd love to chat with you one-on-one. Thank you very much.
I will make a note of that. It's pronounced Jeff. So, thanks again. The BD School has been a long time sponsor and supporter for the Vancouver Enterprise Forum, and we have dozens of alumni that join us after they graduate and continue to support and be big pillars to our community. Another organization that has dozens of alumni, and many here tonight, as well as help to support some of the more innovative companies and has been doing so for many, many years. The BDC Venture Capital organization here has helped grow more than 500 businesses since 1984, active at every stage of a company's development cycle from seed through expansion and exit. The BDC Venture Capital focuses on innovative businesses in the area of IT, healthcare, energy, and clean technology. With more than $1 billion in current and planned investments, they are the largest and most active institutional venture investor in Canada. Their direct investment portfolio now composes of more than 123 active companies for a total of $370 million, and their fund investment portfolio contains 30 active funds representing $382 million in commitments. That is a lot of money, and that's definitely a big supporter of our community. So before I invite Jeff Catherwood to come up and host the lightning pitches, I'd like to a big round of applause for the BDC for really supporting our community. Jeff, take it away.
Thanks, Tim. It's the night of Jeffs, so that makes it easier. And also, I'm a proud alum of the SFU BD School of Business as well. So it helped me change my career, even though the management, the MBA with the technology focus wasn't available when I did it back before my hair turned gray. So I just want to shout out to a couple people in the audience, maybe if they could stand up. Axel Christensen of our Growth and Transition Capital, and Mark Trevitt, if they're here. Put your hands in the air. Great. So those are two of my colleagues from the BDC that you can meet at the networking event afterwards. And we're really proud to have been in venture capital since the mid-'80s. BDC's funded many successful companies here in Vancouver, going back as far as Creo products, where we made an incredible amount of money, 39 times our money from a $2.5 million investment. So do the math, that's a $98 million return. It was before my time, but that helped spawn a lot of successful entrepreneurs and other startups in Vancouver, and we continue to fund other companies. We were funders in Ballard. I'm proud to have Teradici on the panel tonight. One of my investments, D-Wave Systems, a quantum computing company, and Build Direct, which is blowing the doors off for an e-commerce company. So we've got a great portfolio. Happy to support them. And with that, I'm going to stop the commercial and start the lightning pitches. So I don't have to time anything, but I believe you guys have all been briefed on what the rules are. You have 100 seconds. I've been told to be ruthless. I have a shepherd's crook in my back pocket, and I will tackle you or make sure that you stop when that red light starts blinking. Okay, so we clear on the rules? Let's get started then. The first presenter was right to my left is David Gluzman from BlackSquare. So David, take it away. You can do whatever you want.
All right, let's do this. So, hello everyone, my name is David Gluzman. I'm co-founder and president of BlackSquare. We're based out of Calgary. We've been around in terms of a product offering since 2011. We actually started originally as something called Wine Collective. That company has since split off. It's its own thing. Wine Collective is Canada's largest monthly wine club. But the essence is that we created technology for ourselves first and foremost and created black box for wineries across the world. So we've been compared to being the Shopify of the wine industry before, and because of our relationship with Wine Collective back in the day, we have a lot of experience in what we're doing. So Black Box in general, it's platform as a service or software as a service, depending how you want to skin it. It's for the wine and spirits industry around the world. It's the only worldwide multi-currency, multi-jurisdiction, and multi-language platform. These are the numbers of the market. So as you can see, globally, it's about a $12 billion direct market with a 56% year-over-year growth. So this is definitely a market that is growing. Some of you might be wondering, what the heck are they doing in the wine industry? There's enough interest here, trust me. This is our current market share in terms of traction. So you can see Australia is cresting towards 20%. So is Canada. We've been doing quite well. And this is pretty much where we're at. So we've gone through 2 seed rounds, a couple $1 million, and right now we're looking for a $5 million Series A. We're looking for Ruby and PHP people, international sales and marketing, and as well, of course, strategic alliances. So that's pretty much it. If you want to check it out, those are the web addresses, and we'd love to hear some feedback, or if you can hook us up with any of those things prior, that'd be great.
Well done. That was perfect. Thank you very much. So our next speaker is Nick Budden of Vectr.
Hi, everyone. Like I said, my name is Nick Budden. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Vectr. So we're building graphic design software without the learning curve. It's for web and desktop, and because we built it that way, we can integrate collaboration directly into the app itself for a Google Docs style graphic design. Also, because we've built it for both the web and desktop, we can integrate a marketplace into the app itself for design assets, things like stock photos, patterns, and icon sets. And again, because it's built for the web, we can embed it in other people's websites. So for example, if you're making a custom t-shirt, you can embed that on the t-shirt site itself so that users can create it there without needing to design it somewhere else and then upload it. Because we have those 3 ways to monetize, we can give the app itself away for free. After music and movies and Microsoft Word, Adobe software is the #1 most pirated, so it's pretty powerful. Now, the biggest thing that separates us from Adobe software is just too hard to use. So they know it's hard to use, but the reason that it's so hard to use is because of the architecture behind the product. The UI on top is a very thin layer. Now, they can't fix that without going back and starting the project over. So that's what we've done, is we've started over. We've built a new architecture behind the product, which lets us take these abstract concepts and remove them from the app. Now, we believe that this market size is artificially restricted for several reasons. And the first is that these programs are so hard to use that people just never get over the learning curve trying to do so. It's one of the only markets in the world where an entire section of the bookstore is dedicated to users trying to convert themselves onto the product. 2 co-founders and just took on our first advisor, angel investor. If anyone wants to know more about the product, let me know.
Great. Excellent. Thank you very much. So thanks, Nick. And our next speaker is Steve Lowry from Discover House Media.
It's actually a Discover Media House.
Discover Media House, pardon me.
And
I'm going to have to talk to my scriptwriter.
Our company is the world's first online marketplace for the entire advertising industry. Might sound surprising to say that when you can go and buy impressions online, automatically. But when it comes to radio, print, TV, and out of home, there's no go-to website where you can just basically buy all that media in one place. And that's where we come in. What's driving the demand for this is a massive sea change in the advertising industry. It's called programmatic ad buying. And what that is computers buying media from computers and auctions setting the pricing rather than human beings doing the negotiating. Programmatic has been growing 100% year over year in the digital sector, and that's about to hit as a wave in traditional media now. That's where we step in, providing the tools and technology for advertisers and media agencies to succeed in this new realm. So our automation platform is the first of its kind in the industry, and none of the other players are pursuing the business model that we have yet. Programmatic ad buying is going to be a bigger change for the media industry than the advent of social media. It's that big. So we're looking for investors who get excited at the prospect of changing an entire large industry that's of the size of $550 billion a year spent annually on media. So if you're interested, we're doing our demo outside and just in the process of launching our beta product. So we'd love to show that to you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Steve. And our next speaker is Sheila Wong from AURO.
So once upon a time, there was something called a cloud. And every day, we throw data into this cloud, not sure where it goes. Sometimes knowing that it goes to multiple places across the world. Maybe to India, Netherlands, sometimes all across the States. And one day, we realized that we didn't want to set aside our needs and be forced into these cloud systems for the supposed cost benefits and services. We don't want to store our data across the ocean, and we don't want to store it across the border. Because of that, a group of us with 17 years of on-the-job experience came together to solve that problem. And because of that, we realized that Canada doesn't have its own cloud service. And because of that, we wanted Canada to have its own cloud platform. Until finally, we built AURO, the first true open cloud powered by OpenStack that stores all your data inside Canada. This cloud is compatible with integrated services like Ansible and Vagrant. The cloud is agile, scalable, customizable for your specific needs, but with no vendor lock-ins. The cloud is compliant, meeting privacy requirements of Canadian businesses and public organizations, so that finally we have a 100% Canadian open cloud. My name is Sheila. I am the Community Engagement Manager at AURO, and I'm so happy to be here tonight to tell you about AURO because we just launched. So if you're looking for a partner that can grow and scale with your business, then come talk to us because we have the most affordable pricing in Canada. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you very much, Sheila. And our next speaker is Michael Vogel from Netcoins.
Hi, my name is Michael Vogel. I'm founder and CEO of Netcoins. We're a Bitcoin startup. Now, Bitcoin may be a scary word to some of you, maybe not as scary as Renee Zellweger, but to us it's very exciting because we have an exciting mandate, which is to bring a Bitcoin ATM to every store. And the possibilities with Bitcoin are absolutely astonishing, with companies like Dell and PayPal and 80,000 others following suit. It's really a fascinating time to be involved in digital currency. So Netcoins is sponsoring an event next Monday evening in Robson Square for you to learn about Bitcoin and network with other Bitcoin startups in Vancouver. As part of the night, Netcoins is sponsoring the Vancouver premiere of the documentary The Rise and Rise of Bitcoin. And this documentary just premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival in New York this year, and we're super excited to have the rights to premiere it for you for free in Vancouver. So please register on the link on the screen here, netcoins.eventbrite.com. It should be a great way to learn more about Bitcoin and network with other Bitcoin startups and other tech startups that are working in the space. Just very quickly, right now about Netcoins, we're at a pre-accelerator in Chinatown called Spring, and we're going to be working on a seed round very soon, this year or next, so we'll definitely be back to let you know how our progress goes. And once again, my name is Michael Vogel. Please sign up for the event and check out Netcoins at gonetcoins.com and on Twitter at netcoinsca. Thank you.
Well done. Excellent, everyone. Thank you very much. Everyone nailed it. And I just want everyone to, once again, just give a big, hearty round of applause to all of the lightning pitchers, please. So I'll turn it back to Tim, and he's going to wrangle the next panel.
So we have a hot swap now. If we can swap the panelists and the lightning pitchers, give you an opportunity. Also, you feel free to take a seat in the front if you like. You may also go up into the bar and have a drink. Which also brings me to, for those of you who haven't been here for a couple of months, the Vancouver, or the Vancity Theatre now allows beer in here. So I'd really like to thank the Vancouver International Film Festival Society that runs it to allow us to do that. So please feel free to get a beer, relax, and enjoy yourself. Just want to make a couple of quick mentions. This is a nuclear bunker where there is no connection to the outside world except through our colony Wi-Fi. So if you have the urge, and I'd like to make the request to check out our Twitter account and ask for, if you've got a question for the panel, to put a Q in front of the panel, in front of your question, and then put it on Twitter, and we'll be taking a look at some of the questions afterwards. To hook up to the Colony Wi-Fi, please just check out where it says Open Networks. Colony is there, then click Okie doke to the I agree to the terms and services and to give up my firstborn child, and then you're connected to the internet. So without any further ado, I would like to hand over to Jenny.
Thank you so much, Tim. Welcome, everyone. So my name is Jenny Yang. I am an entrepreneur and currently taking a little sabbatical over at VanEdge as a venture partner there. I'm also an ex-colleague of Jeff's at BDC, and my name is not Jeff. I'm going to break that trend. But I was a great colleague Jeff for many years, almost a decade, before he had gray hair. But I'm here to moderate the panel tonight, and what I'd like to do is maybe get each of the panelists just to quickly give a 1 to 2 minute short background on themselves. Do you want to start? Let's start from here.
This side?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Chris Day. I founded a company in 2002 called Fully Managed. We're an outsourced IT provider. We have about 45 employees, office in Vancouver, and office in Edmonton in Alberta. We support about 120 businesses, mostly medium-sized companies today that average probably 50 to 200 employees. Very strong demographic for a lot of the cloud conversions that have been happening over the last, say, 3 to 5 years. We won a lot of awards around the Microsoft platform, even when it sucked. And now that it's good, we had a lot of success with Google as well. mainly, our kind of core purpose is taking these businesses and making IT less of a problem for them. So for us, cloud computing has become something that we lead with, and it's not just around cost savings, but it's around kind of uptime and availability and simplicity and budgeting and things like that. So we have a few things to contribute
Great.
today, and
Thanks, Chris.
that's it.
All right, Mark.
Great, thanks. Mark Cunningham, D&B Cloud Innovation Center. I'm kind of a four-time startup guy that's now part of a big company doing a big cloud innovation project, so it's a big change for me. I started originally at three startups in the business intelligence and analytics space. I was originally involved in the founding group that did Crystal Decisions back in the very early days. And started up another company called Symmetrics, which was also in the BI space, and more recently Indici, which was a startup we did, which was my first foray in the cloud, where we basically took cloud business intelligence and brought it into 100% pure cloud versus kind of just the old school way of doing web apps and trying to pretend it was cloud and ASPs and call it cloud. So Indici was really the first pure cloud play that I've done. We got acquired in April by Dun & Bradstreet, and for those of you who don't know D&B, they're the largest commercial database in the world. They hold 220 million businesses that do credit information on businesses. So if you've heard of the Duns number, that's who Dun & Bradstreet is. So basically what we're doing is modernizing that company. They're a 174-year-old company, and they bought our company and essentially wanted us to become their cloud play to essentially lead the company to the cloud. So it's actually a pretty exciting project for me, which is the reason why I signed up to it. And so it's a great opportunity. We're growing very rapidly. We're hiring like demons right now. And so it's a great opportunity. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, I'm Ziad Lammam. I'm in product management at Teradici Corporation, and we're a proud member of the BDC portfolio. Personally, also am a BD MOT alumni. So Teradici has been around for 10 years, actually, believe it or not. And really, we started the company really to focus on the end user space and user experience as it relates to cloud computing. When we started the company, it really wasn't about cloud computing at the time. 10 years ago, if you can imagine, things were very different. So we've gone through three major phases in the company. The first one being really focused on delivering technology for power users, workstation users, doing things like animation and visual design. And then we moved into an area called virtual desktop, which is where corporations basically do all of their computing in an on-premise data center. And then the third phase of the company that is really tied to our discussion here today is all about desktop as a service. And that's where we find ourselves today in partnership with companies like Amazon, AWS, delivering desktops to the users in the cloud. So.
Excellent. Phil?
So I'm Phil Whelan. I've been a developer for many years, worked for companies like the BBC in England, Cloudera, and Livedoor.com in Japan. I've been working with ActiveState for several years now. I was first a developer, and the last 18 months have become a technology evangelist. So trying to keep up with the open source projects that we're based on. We're based on Cloud Foundry open source projects. We were the first people to adopt that and build platform as a service solution for large enterprises that we've been selling for several years. We're also based on Docker as well. Most people might know us from products like ActivePerl and ActivePython because we started selling those back in '97. I think like 97% of Fortune 1000 companies actually use those products. So we have deep roots in the enterprise, and now we're trying to sell the cloud to the enterprise.
Excellent. Eugene?
Eugene Dong. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Procurify, and we are a cost management startup. We actually started at BCIT from a school project, and I met my two other co-founders there, and we just kept going and building the company ever since. We actually help companies manage their spending, anywhere from requesting an item to approving it to getting it purchased and received. And we just kept growing ever since, and it's our third year. We're at 53 countries and just keep going.
Great, thanks, Eugene. So, when I was asked to come and talk about and moderate this cloud panel, I thought cloud is such a big topic. Can you get the next slide up? Because I don't have the clicker here. Oh, didn't. Okay, yeah. So, didn't work out very well. Anyway, so cloud is a pretty broad topic, and I thought, how we're going to talk about it. If you can do the next. Yeah. And I thought the best way is probably just to think about cloud in 3 layers, if you will. The most bottom or the infrastructure layer, infrastructure as a service, and including that in that is desktop as a service. And we have companies here that can address any of the questions and what's going on in that space, in that layer. And the second layer above that is platform as a service. Think of that almost as a middleware for the cloud. And we have companies like ActiveState and I think D&B Cloud Innovation Center getting into that space. And then, of course, at the application layer, the software as a service layer, you have companies like Procurify that's just delivering pure application as a service. And, in the past, I think Indici and you still may be doing that, that Mark can address. So I thought I'm going to address the questions into those 3 layers, and hopefully we'll have a lively discussion. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of cross-reading in between as well. And okay, so with that, I thought maybe I'll throw out the most broadest questions I can to begin the discussion, and that's what is your view of the cloud world? Who's using it? Is it still just the SMBs? Is it big enterprise? If not everybody's using it, why not? What are some of the pros and cons and drawbacks? And I thought maybe we can just start, Eugene, at the other end of work. Just a quick 2-minute. What's your view of the cloud world?
Sure. I think initially when cloud started, it was mostly all small to medium businesses because larger companies tend to shy away from new technologies. They like to see what happens and see if it actually comes to fruition and still with us in the future. And what we've seen now, I think, is that if you've seen the latest Google apps and articles, we see a lot of larger companies adopting it. Even for Box, a lot of the larger GE corporate companies have actually started using the services that Google provides. And we traditionally don't see that because they like to have everything in-house. They have their own data centers and host all their apps within their own. And we see that, I think, in the coming stages that it's too expensive to host everything in-house, and you can actually do it much better by giving to a third-party provider.
Bill, you want to give us your view from the PaaS world?
So PaaS is all about the software layer, so it's all about deploying applications. Essentially, we've got on this diagram stacked up IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, but they could just as easily be put side by side because they're actually providing different things. We think software is where the future is, deploying applications. That's what everyone wants to do. And that's what the platform as a service layer is actually targeting. So with our product, we can run on top of any infrastructure as a service or hypervisor. So companies like the AURO cloud here tonight, you could run platform as a service across that and across Amazon as one large cloud and decide where things go.
Okay. Ziad, what are you seeing in the adoption of this in your world, in your desktop as a service?
So we're quite fortunate to have a lot of visibility at really the end user level, which is basically people like you and I who are using our computers every day. And so DaaS or IaaS really is about kind of taking what's been established today in SaaS and PaaS and now extending that to users who used to have a computer under their desk and basically removing that and delivering their full desktop and their full applications, basically right to their desk in a cloud computing way of delivery. And that's kind of where we play. So we get to see a lot of users deploying this technology, both in small scale, but also in very large scale. It really is across the board. And I can say, both government and defense is certainly deploying this for security reasons and performance use cases. Healthcare, a lot of hospitals are also deploying this in hospital campus organizations, right from nursing carts in hospitals to doctor and patient room offices where you really need to have a very small footprint secure device to access your desktop. Power users, so anyone doing animation or automotive design, Disney is using this. Ferrari, those kind of companies, basically wanting to remove all of that big, noisy, insecure hardware from the user's desk. And so we've just seen it across the board in retail as well. Grocery firms are using this, really endless, and it's quite global as well.
Interesting. So definitely see a pattern building. Mark,
Yeah, I
are
mean,
you
for
seeing the
us,
same?
yeah, I think, in my days with Indici, I think what we saw is, we built a cloud analytic platform, and I think the initial thinking was nobody's going to move their data into the cloud, and that was kind of a sentiment in the early days when we started in '07, but I think what we saw was a huge shift in that time period of people. We thought it was a mid-market play. It was like the big enterprises wouldn't adopt this technology. It was more of a, sub 1,000 employee type of a play. We'll get it in there, and they don't have the IT resources, so it's kind of a no-brainer, et cetera, et cetera. But we actually, over time, found that the uptake in the enterprise was actually larger than in the mid-market. So we ended up with significantly very large customers that we did not anticipate we would have, and we had to soup up our platform quite dramatically while we were acquiring these customers really rapidly with a small team. So we ended up with, Coke Enterprises, Procter and Gamble. We ended up with some really huge companies that we weren't anticipating. So I think, to me, everybody is going to move to the cloud. I drank the Kool-Aid a few years ago. So, I kind of liken this to the digital versus film debate. And, I remember the day when people said, digital is going to do its thing, but you know what, film's going to be around. It's like, look, the train's coming, and everything's going to move to the cloud. There's going to be the holdouts. There's going to be some of the IT guys are going to be locked in the back room trying to hold out as long as they can. But the reality is that I believe it's all going to go to the cloud eventually. And you're going to have a very few things that are going to be sitting on premise inside the firewall in the next 10 years. So I think it's sort of one of the dinosaurs is going to become extinct here, and it's only a matter of time.
Chris, I see you nodding your head. Are you seeing the same thing?
Absolutely, yeah. So for us, we have the benefit of being like on the small mid-size, right? So everybody in our portfolio of customers is pretty much at that cutting edge. They're making those early decisions, and what we've seen, for example, last year, one of the lines of business we have is, and I know it's a question later, is hardware, and we grew 30% last year, but we sold half the hardware of the previous year. And why is that? Well, it's because we aren't selling hardware, we aren't selling servers, we aren't selling storage, we aren't selling, exchange licenses, whatever the case may be. So we've really seen that adoption is enormous in sort of up to 200 employee space, which is a large bit of the business that's out there, at least in Western Canada. And so, and this year, basically our CFOs and CEOs that we deal with say, hey, is there anything you guys can do to just get rid of every server that we have here? Because we just hate servers. Like, we hate everything to do with it. We hate the refresh cycle. We hate the fact that we can never predict the cost. We're always buying new hardware and this and that. It's too slow and blah, blah, blah. So, I think in part of our strategic plan this year is to almost do zero hardware and just convert that into purely either private cloud or software as a service type scenarios where these guys can turn it from a capital investment into just an operating cost.
Wow, so it sounds like everyone's agreed sort of that shift has happened, that the wave is cresting, and the physical, the on-prem world is getting crushed. So given that, I'm going to address the questions to the guys in the infrastructure as a service side. Are the CIOs that you're encountering that are buying these cloud services, do they feel threatened? I mean, CIOs are in charge of managing the IT infrastructure for security and compliance, and a big part of it is their territory as well. Now they're losing their territory, so to speak, right? So are they feeling threatened, or do they really now see it as an opportunity? Because I think they used to feel threatened, and I don't know if that shift has happened. What's your perspective? Let's start with Ziad.
Yeah. So kind of agree with some of the previous comments where there was a lot of doubt earlier on, and I would say, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, people were very hesitant doing year-long POCs to, proof of concepts to really determine if this was right for them. But you're now seeing, CIOs basically look at their peer companies and see successful deployments take place. And they're also faced with, having to reduce their IT budgets as well. So there's a lot of pressure coming towards the CIO to really move in this direction, and they're seeing some of the benefits from other organizations making those shifts. So I think everyone's doing their due diligence, but it's clear getting rid of that hardware infrastructure is important, and delivering a really solid user experience, right, to people moving to the cloud is important as well. The thing we see the most of is that benefit of security, right? There's all sorts of other great things you get from moving to the cloud, but the thing we see more and more of in the news today is breaches on security, right? We're all familiar with that. And so it's even more beneficial for these CIOs to say, I'm going to put everything in there, because frankly, it's a lot easier to trust a large cloud provider with your data than it is to trust your own organization in many ways, which doesn't have sort of top-notch security. So
interesting, because I think security has always been one of the words out there. Don't trust the cloud. Keep everything in-house. So you're saying now they're seeing it in a different way.
Yeah.
And Chris, cloud. You started out as a hosting provider. Is there a difference between the two? Do the users care? Do the users perceive a difference? Or what's your thought on that?
They really don't perceive a difference. I mean, I think for us, why people are pretty much switching over is, on average, lower total cost of ownership for sure. Typically, like very easy migration costs you can get in like right away, like in the next week or two. You can almost do it if you had to pull the plug in our world. Less servers, smaller IT departments. These all kind of support our needs as an outsourced IT provider. Someone can outsource some of their IT functions to the cloud provider and then bring us in. They usually make that decision. So so from my perspective, it's pretty much, other than things like compliance issues or which are obviously occur, and the Canadian cloud and things like that. Those are definitely true issues, but largely for us, it's all about reducing costs and increasing uptime. So
data sovereignty, sort of having the data reside in Canada versus in other places, is one of the lightning pitches is a real issue and concern.
It is. I think it is. There's I'd say probably half of our customers have that concern. The other half don't really care. They would say, hey, and that would be on the basis that it would be twice as much in Canada versus the US typically to host that. So if it's on balance, I think they would pick Canada. So.
Right.
Yeah, I think I can comment on your data sovereignty thing. If you want to talk about data sovereignty, come over to D&B. So we have tens of thousands of data sources that we collect from daily, 5.5 million times a day. That we're updating for 220 million businesses globally. So we have data in hundreds of countries all over the world, and data sovereignty is a massive issue for us in dealing with where data needs to be, remain at rest versus in motion, and how it moves into the cloud. We got armies of legal teams in order to be able to figure all this stuff out. So big issues that have to be dealt with the cloud. And of course, if you're following the news, Amazon just opened a new data center in Europe, which was actually a big win for anybody that's doing global cloud solutions like we are. So for us, data sovereignty is massive. Cloud deployments in various countries is going to be very important for us, right?
So
it's well beyond just a Canada thing for us, right? We're a global company. We're all about global data and trying to figure out how to consolidate a massive data problem in a global environment. So for us, as we think about a cloud strategy, we have to have a cloud strategy that's truly global, not just in a single country. So of course, we're looking at vendors that can provide cloud solutions across the world. And so I think that's where you see, I was at the Gartner conference 2 weeks ago, and Satya from the CEO of Microsoft was talking about sort of his play versus an Amazon play and sort of the differentiation. And of course, his big play is the fact that they believe their enterprise and the enterprise needs are around data sovereignty and protecting that data on a country by country specific basis. which means that they're playing that we have more data centers than the Amazons. And so, of course, Amazon's reacting to that, and they're firing up their data centers as quickly as they can do it. So I think if you're more of a global business and you're looking at figuring out how to do your cloud deployments, you need to be kind of thinking about these things. But it's definitely a significant issue if you're playing at the global scale.
Eugene, at Procurify, do you run into that concern, or are most of your customers in Canada?
We don't have a whole lot of customers in Canada. Most of them are around the world, so it doesn't come up that often. But sometimes it does come up, and usually we kind of stick by a thing where we're backed on Google. Everything's hosted on Google, and they tend to like that, and they're fine with the data being stored in the U.S.
Okay, so there's a lot of talk about big, Amazon being the runaway leader in cloud infrastructure as a service provider, and now they're opening data centers in Europe, and I think Asia will follow. And all the large infrastructure providers are sort of gangbusters, growing like crazy. So given that the infrastructure is growing so quickly, what happens to the platform as a service? Is there a play for a generalized platform as a service, or does platform as a service become more specialized for a particular type of applications like what D&B is trying to build? Maybe I'll throw that over to Phil to answer, since you guys are in that business. Is the infrastructure as a service guy going to move up the stack and start eating into what platform as a service wants to bring?
Yeah, I think one misconception about platform as a service is it's very domain specific, but it's more general for deploying any kind of application. The good thing about platform as a service is that it can run on the private infrastructure. So a lot of large enterprises, they want to start internally, build up their internal cloud, their private cloud on top of OpenStack and things like that. But they're also looking at Amazon. And so the platform as a service can span those two. They can start internally on OpenStack, and then maybe have a hybrid cloud, so they burst out to Amazon if their load goes up.
So it enables them to have a hybrid cloud strategy? Is that what you're...
Yeah, so it kind of treats the infrastructure as a commodity. The thing about the infrastructure, in many ways, it's not really designed for people creating applications or running software. It's a way to provision machines. But as a developer, I don't want to think about what I've got to do with a machine, install or certain system dependencies like security updates. So platform as a service is an abstraction on top of that. And it helps you, as like Amazon is getting very popular, migrate the cluster across to Amazon, or maybe Google drops their price by 30%. Maybe you can migrate some of your load across onto there.
So are you seeing that in the large enterprises you guys work with, that cloud migration is starting to become an issue? As all of these clouds come up, Amazon has their own, and then Microsoft and Google has one, and everybody else has public clouds. Does cloud lock-in become an issue for people? I know this was the topic hot about 5 years ago when cloud first came out, and then we kind of just stopped hearing anything about it. Is that what platform as a service is trying to address? Lock-in?
Yeah, in some ways. Some people are worried about like infrastructure lock-in. People are worried about platform as a service lock-in or software as a service lock-in. Everyone's worried about lock-in. And you have solutions like OpenStack, but then on the infrastructure level, but then if you're running on Amazon, you've got completely different APIs. So if you build your infrastructure around that, then you've got a problem. Platform as a service, it tries to be agnostic to things, and so you can migrate from one place to another.
Right. And Mark, at Dun & Bradstreet, you guys, as you guys go into the cloud, is that also something in your mind about? Is cloud lock-in even on your radar?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, if I put my startup hat on at Indici, we were pretty much more of an infrastructure as a service based cloud app that we built. So we didn't use a platform as a service. We found that to be very flexible. We used Amazon. It was very simple to get up and running and fire up and move fast and be nimble and all those neat things. So I think that works well in the startup world, and the platform as a service, does kind of, it sometimes can limit your flexibility of what you can do. One of the things that, they're talking about lock-in on the infrastructure, you can get locked in, but if you architect your system in a thoughtful way, I think you can architect it in a way where you can leverage some of the infrastructure services, but you don't embed yourself so far that you can't change relatively quickly. And we always kept ourselves very nimble and to see where we could literally pick up and move from one cloud provider to the next, within 30 days. So that was kind of a goal that we always kept in mind, and we can still do that today, even within the D&B world. As we kind of enter into the D&B world, we're no longer just this startup with our own, kind of blinkers on, thinking about what we're building, what we're doing. So we start to think about how do we support an ecosystem? How do we build an ecosystem and then support that ecosystem? So for us, we have no intention of becoming a generic platform as a service play and competing in that market, but we do have a design to build essentially our own platform as a service within D&B. And the purpose of that is really to, as Phil mentioned, is that infrastructure as a service isn't designed to help software developers build their apps, right? So to build software rapidly, you need to provide them with some software layer so that they can just grab things through APIs and widgets and gadgets and these types of things. So you need to build a layer so they can grab things and build things rapidly and iteratively in an incremental way. So for us, that's the way we think about it, a platform as a service is basically a D&B specific platform as a service that we can enable our own organization, because we have hundreds of products at D&B. So we have to create a cloud platform that essentially I can go out to my entire organization and say, you can build apps on top of our platform. And the Indice platform essentially is that foundation, and we're going to be continuing to build that out. And then, of course, we can go to our partner community and third-party developer community and say, you can build apps on top of our infrastructure as well as our platform as a service and be able to deploy apps very rapidly. So it's sort of a different mindset.
Sort of a customized platform as a service.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
D&B. Yeah. Interesting. Well, so this comes up. It makes me question. So everybody's moving to software as a service eventually. I mean, some people may do it at the IS level to deploy the application, but really at the end of the day, everybody just wants to use the application that's in the cloud, probably either via their browser or via a mobile phone of some sort or some mobile device. So if that's the way the world is moving, what happens to the desktop? Do you still need desktop as a service? Mm-hmm. Does it go away?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I mean, I'm guilty as everyone else. I think I carry around 4 devices, right, between a tablet, a laptop, phone, and if I'm at my desk, I'll be using some other device. So we're certainly all familiar with having to, access our applications and our software from a number of devices. But at the same time, in the enterprise world, we all go to work, and most of us sit down in an office or in a cubicle, and we access our applications on our desktop. So, I'd say it's less about a question of whether, desktop as a service is going to go away, but it's about allowing really good fidelity access to whatever applications you're going to run from any device. And so we're seeing, and we're actively participating in that and delivering the technology so that you can access your applications or your desktop. A lot of people say Windows is going to go away, right? But it still is here, right? And it's going to be here for a while. It's just so entrenched in our day-to-day lives. Eventually it might, and we're seeing really the desktop be simply a conduit to run applications. You don't necessarily need it, and frankly, when you load up an iPad or a phone or other device, you're really just accessing applications. So in this kind of mix between enterprise and what we hear as consumerization of IT, a lot of us want similar Dropbox functionality that we use in our home life at work, right? We're very familiar with that. And so you're seeing a lot of these cloud vendors start to deliver those same types of capabilities in an enterprise environment. So people are delivering Dropbox-like capability to enterprise cloud users and ensuring that all of your mobile devices can access your desktop and apps. We're not there yet where you can rip out your iPad and really use that on a day-to-day perspective. And I personally like using a keyboard and a mouse for most things. but it's getting better. So it's kind of at that stage where it's
So you're
starting
sort
to
of
get
seeing
better.
that transition happening,
Yeah.
but it's not there. You see it a longer
It's not
term.
there, and it'll be complementary, I guess I would say, is you're not going to see, the traditional desktop just go away, right? It's just such a productive way to, do things. So it's going to be more complementary, and people are going to feel much more comfortable, traveling, roaming around the office without thinking twice about maybe grabbing their mobile device and, moving to an area down, in an office or a location in the campus environment, and just being productive in a mobile environment.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about mobile quite a bit, and we're definitely seeing the huge rise in mobile and people bringing these mobile devices and poking all these holes in the security stuff. And we talked about security, and I think even you mentioned, Ziad, that enterprises are thinking there's more security for them if they went to the cloud. Is that what you all seeing, that people are starting to trust the cloud enough that they feel it's more secure if they go to the cloud? And maybe start with Eugene at Procurify. People who use your services, are they concerned at all about security and security of their data?
Sure. So most of the small to medium businesses we have don't really have that concern. It's when we were dealing with the larger companies that tend to have concern about where data is stored, how secure it is, and how is it transmitted over the web. And more recently, it hasn't been as major issues as before, because they're seeing other companies use it, and they're very happy with seeing services like Dropbox and Box more so used in the actual enterprises now.
So for the SMBs, you're saying it's not a concern really?
Right. They just tend to sign up and start using it. We addressed a few security questions, and then they're up and running. They don't tend to kind of resist anything in regard to security.
Right. And Mark, are you for D&B, when you probably have shadow IT guys who are off developing and deploying apps in Amazon. Is that a concern for D&B, or do you want them all to come to the cloud and use your infrastructure that you're dedeveloping at the D&B Cloud Innovation
We're
Center?
174 years old. There's no concern in security at all. Security's. I mean, obviously, security is big for D&B, but also security is important for any larger business. I agree. I think that in startup land, you get the smaller businesses, and they tend to just sign up to your service. It's kind of a no-brainer. It's easy, and off they go. I think the further you kind of move up in the larger organization, the more they start asking questions, because they have armies of people that are there. Their jobs are to ask questions, right? I mean, they have legal and compliance teams, and they've got 220-page checklist documents that you got to go through, and big companies that we've dealt with had those. I think at the end of the day that they're shifting their thinking. They still have the documents and the whole thing, but they're shifting their thinking, and so they're much more receptive now. And because I think that the larger enterprises are very aware that the wave is here and it's coming, and it's going to break soon enough, whenever that is. And so I see a major shift in the thinking. Yes, they ask the questions, but even when we signed up some of our really large customers, it was a rigorous process to get through that with them. But at the end of the day, they signed the contract. So that's a big step forward when you start seeing bigger enterprises, make that move. But security is absolutely a concern. And I think what's important for all cloud, especially when you get to the SaaS layer and all the layers, is that you actually have to lead with security to a certain extent in the pitch, right? So you need to actually start there, because it actually diffuses the conversation. One of the big issues that we learned when we were out pitching larger organizations is we would tell them all the great features of our product, because we're product guys, right? We're like, oh, it's really cool. It does all this really cool stuff. And then, they would we would just not say anything about security, and then they would go, whoa, well, what about security? Oh, yeah, right, that. So I think it's important that cloud vendors start to shift the conversation and actually start leading with security to a certain extent, because I believe that it hits it head on, and they go, oh, these guys hit this thing head on. They must have something here that's robust and capable. This is a good sign, right? This is a good vendor that clearly is thinking about this thing in a thoughtful manner. So that's one of the things that was a big learning for me, and I think that's obviously what we're going to take into D&B. And I would encourage people, as you go out and look at cloud solutions and cloud vendors, to ask those questions. But also, I agree. I do think the cloud is actually more secure than traditional IT. I mean, you can take a USB key with your most precious spreadsheet and stick it in your computer and email it to 100 people. How secure is that, right? Your people are your weakest link inside of your organization, right? So it's not the data center at Amazon or whoever they are, right? Those things are like Fort Knox. If you ever go visit one, you'd be like, oh my God, these things float, like they do amazing things at these data centers. So I think that the people are the weakest link, and that's something that we all have to kind of come to grips with as we think about security.
So, Chris, is your data center a Fort Knox?
Well, we're trying to get less people into our data center and more people into those, the larger providers. We recognize that early on. There's no way, and I think there's a question around hosting providers, and I think look at colo and where that's at. I mean, everybody will. Most people will get rid of that at this point and switch to something like Amazon or another IaaS provider. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I think for us, we're kind of like see ourselves as cloud shepherds in a way, and we're making more money now with less servers than we were with.
So do you not host? Servers. You don't. So where do you host your services?
We have a pretty large private cloud environment. We probably have 500, 600 servers in there. But if there's an opportunity to take an Exchange environment and migrate it to Office 365 and that works well for the customer, we'll take it because that's not where we get all our revenue from. We get our revenue from the managed services side, the help desk, the sort of like CIO side, strategy side of IT. So we've had people that have had, hey, we're managing your Exchange environment, we want to move it to Office 365. We make the transition. They ask us, hey, what's going to be the new price for you guys to manage all that infrastructure once it's in Office 365? It's got to be a lot easier, right? And we go, it's the same price. And they go, oh, okay, cool. So, it really is. If you look at all the pieces to deliver, Office 365 with some of the other back-end plumbing to make it work with single sign-on, Active Directory, federated services, and all these other complex pieces, we just say same risk to us, so we'll charge you the same thing.
So really, IT as a service is becoming a reality.
Yeah,
in your
and the
world.
people that we hire are becoming different. Different type of people. We used to hire Exchange engineers, and now we wouldn't. I think we have maybe a couple guys that know how to operate Exchange because there's just no Exchange servers that we support anymore. So,
okay.
Well, and I think that answers your question about how does the CIO thinking about the organization. It's just shifting his thinking around what does he do with his team, right? And so it's not about the threat of, oh my God, I'm losing this. There's lots of work for people to do, right? It's just a shifting in the thinking of what they do. And that's just a different mindset.
I want to leave some questions for some time for questions. So I'm going to try to wrap up the panel part with just one last question for everyone. Or I'll give you a choice of two questions, so you can answer whichever one you feel comfortable with. One is, what do you see? What's the future for the cloud in your part of the world? What do you see the future of the cloud? Or the other question is, what do you see as the future for all of these hardware vendors and software vendors that are not as a service? People like Dell, who sells tons of servers, or people like VMware, who sells a lot of virtualization software on premise, but is not doing a lot. Well, they're starting to try to do more in the cloud, but they're not. So what happens to all those guys? I don't know, maybe we can start with Eugene at the end,
Sure,
whichever one you like to answer.
I'll take the future of cloud question. I think right now we're in a state where we see a lot of new vendors popping up. There's quite a few of them, but we haven't really hit a full maturity. We may see a time where there's like a defining answer for every single sector and every single solution for you. Right now, I think we're seeing a lot of different competitors, which is great because that drives innovation. But soon, I think we'll see a lot of consolidation in software.
So consolidation's coming. All right. Phil?
I think with what are large companies that sell hardware going to do? So IBM has had like 9 bad quarters where they didn't meet what they were hoping in revenue, but they've been heavily investing in the cloud, and actually their cloud revenue is actually going up. So I think that's the way that it's going to go for a lot of big companies. They've got to invest heavily in the cloud, and the old legacy hardware stuff is going to go away.
Be a shift. All right. Ziad?
Yeah, I'll take question 2 as well. A lot of the partners you mentioned there are Teradici partners, VMware, Dell, Amazon, AWS, and others. And what we're seeing, because we're directly working with those partners, is they're absolutely shifting. I mean, they realize what's happening. I mean, those three vendors you just mentioned right there are so involved in the cloud that, you know, they're leading the charge. While VMware, for example, was traditionally delivering technology for on-premise, they now have a DaaS offering, and they deliver desktops over the cloud as well. And they were able to make that shift very quickly. Now, what they did is acquire a company to bring that on board rapidly, but they still had a lot of integration to do to make that happen. But now that gets them into a position where they can compete with someone like Amazon, and, you know, Dell's looking at the same thing. So everyone's really making that shift very quickly. No one's sitting behind selling PCs, and you're seeing reorganizations of companies like HP into different business units because they all realize they have to operate more efficiently to take advantage of this shift.
I'll answer both quickly. I think in the related to the vendors, I mean, we were just down at VMware for a briefing with their CIO and CEO. So that one of the advantages of actually being in a big company is you actually get to go do this stuff. I never got to do that when I was in a startup. So it was actually really cool to kind of hear a VMware and their vision and their pitch. They are going full bore on the cloud stuff, right? So they're definitely going that direction because they know that the traditional infrastructure side of things is shifting, and they're really driving the software-defined data center strategy for them is a big part of that, and the cloud's a big part of that movement. On the future of cloud, I think for us, really, I think what cloud provides an opportunity for all of us business users is beautiful, elegant user experiences that hopefully we've never had before, especially in the enterprise. I mean, the enterprise is just wrought with the most horrifying, terrible-looking software you could ever use. And then, as was mentioned in the consumer world, it's cool, it's simple, it's easy to use. So I think there's huge shift going on in the enterprise to create these really slick, more beautiful interfaces. But I think the more significant thing about cloud, what it opens up is the ability to build true collaborative ecosystems, which you would never be able to do when you're building old-fashioned desktop software. So now I can build a piece of software that's truly global, and is a multi-tenanted single code base that I can deliver to any customer anywhere in the world, and they're all working with the same product and the same experience, and I can change and enhance that experience really dynamically. And I can engage third-party partners to develop on my platform using APIs. And so that's a very powerful shift in the way that we build software and software capabilities, because we as a software company don't have to actually build everything. We can get other people to build on top of our platform, and you're seeing that everywhere, whether it's iCloud and the App Store or whether you're Salesforce.com and the App Exchange. You're seeing that lots of different vendors. So I think that's where you're going to see a big push in the future with a lot of the cloud vendors, is them trying to build their own ecosystems around their platforms.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I've been pretty well covered, but I think hardware, it's going to become limited to whatever you're holding in your hand or sitting in front of, and the stuff that's in the network room, server rooms are going to really start to deflate, as we've seen drastically over the last 3 years, and I think in small, mid-sized companies, not that many years, and there won't be much left other than a router and a switch in the closet there. So, just same reason we don't sell those devices, and you can buy a Surface Pro 3. We can't even sell it anymore. You got to go to the Microsoft store or buy it from one of 2 approved online retailers type of thing. So I think that's hardware. I think the future of cloud is really all about apps. It's that's what people are. It's like, I want to install an app, I want to run it, and it just works. And nobody wants to deal with sitting in front of a computer for 4 hours and getting all your apps installed. So I think that's already happening. I think in small companies, and CRM apps, ERP apps. Right now, it's really like email and CRM are the biggest apps that people are using on their personal devices. So that's going to keep extending, and then there'll be a point where, hey, we don't need any service to run that. We just subscribe to that service for a fixed fee per month. That's it.
Yeah. Good. So. Is there any questions here? I'll take some up there. I don't know if there's a mic going around. If not, if you want to just shout out the question, I'll repeat it.
Take a moment and speak a little bit about the
supply chain. A client who wants this cloud system might be tied into a telecom provider which has a regional base. Now in the United States, there's another telecom provider. In Europe, there's a third, fourth, fifth one. Let's say like an automotive manufacturer, getting all his workshops from one system, or your telematics providers and machine systems. We haven't spoken too much regarding that supply chain. You can buy one provider for cloud, but now you might need your client to reach out with 15 telecom providers to reach that cloud worldwide as well.
Did everybody hear that question? Yeah? Okay. Who wants to take that one? So if I understand it, the question is, for the cloud providers, do their end customer need to go through different telecom providers? Is that right?
In the machine space.
Oh, okay, in the M2M.
Working with the cloud seems to be natural progression. For example, telematics. There's a piece missing in this cloud conversation between the client who's interested in speaking to the cloud and the software that's with the telecommunication provider.
Okay.
Is there any kind of discussion about links in each of these regions to groups that would reach out to the clients of your client?
Yeah, has anybody up here had any experience on the M2M? Yeah, do you want to take a shot at that?
I don't have any answer to that. I don't have any experience with it.
Anybody else want to take a...
You stumped me on that one, buddy.
Daytime. I don't know that world.
Yeah, I think we didn't really get any Internet of Things experts up here today. It was mostly cloud focused, as in cloud applications, not really on the device or the Internet of Things focused. Sorry. Another question? Down. Okay, yeah, over here.
Looking at the long term, what's going to be the opportunity for small new ideas to get an opportunity to move forward? As I look at all these different layers, they're getting large, overly large. Microsoft's, Amazon's, etc. Google. Email now is just really one or two apps that you get from those providers. How do small companies now get an opportunity? You go back 20 years ago, whether it's gaming or software, there was plethoras of companies with ideas, and that's what made our industry today. As we go forward, is there a danger that we've commoditized everything so well, there's no more opportunity, and we lock ourselves in to a destiny?
So the question is, where are the new opportunities going forward in the cloud computing world? Are we just locking ourselves into these three layers, or where is the innovation going to come from?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the investment size, you're going to have huge pockets to get started. Unlike, currently you can come out of BCIT, graduate and generate something.
Yeah, I think it depends on which layer you're trying to get into. If you're trying to get in at the infrastructure layer, then you've got to compete with Google, Amazon, and Microsoft Azure. And I think probably already we're getting to the point where it's like the big three, like the GE, Ford, and Chrysler. It's hard to compete. But I think you can still. There'll always be innovation all the way up the stack. All these layers are like abstractions. And there's companies out there that need to build their own version of Linux because the abstraction of Linux doesn't quite fit their business model of what they're trying to build. They've got an idea and they want to build it. So there'll always be companies jumping in at different levels, and there are very large rounds of investment now to do big things if you pull together the right team who can disrupt things. Because over time, older technologies stagnate, and we need to rebuild all the time at some point.
Yeah, my take on this is that, I'm sort of an eternal optimist in the sense of I actually think there's lots of secrets still to be revealed in our world, right? So I think even though there's the big 3 or 4 guys that seem to be dominating right now, it doesn't mean that there's some new great innovation that we haven't figured it out yet. I don't know what it is. Maybe nobody knows what it is, but I actually think that, look at the history of our planet, right, and the innovations that have occurred over the history of our time. And, when we think this is just the way it's going to be, it gets disrupted at some point in our history. So I do think that at all those layers, there's still secrets to be revealed, and there's still opportunity. What those are, we don't know yet, but someone's going to come out with something, and you're going to go, damn, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, I just want to add one word,
right?
Tesla. So. Yeah,
exactly. So I think, but if you're going to have deep pockets and, the right backers to be able to, take that cool idea, that big secret, and reveal it. I think at the SaaS level, the software as a service level, is probably where the most opportunity is, and the lowest barrier to entry to be able to go in and play in the cloud game, because it is still easy to come up with an idea and spin up an app and build it. Whether you're going to be successful or not, who knows, right? But it's relatively easy to get started in that space and fire something up. I can round up 5 of my best buddies right now, and we could probably come up with an app in a couple of days and build it and spool it up and throw it on Amazon and go out and try to, market it virally or whatever. But I can't really do that at the infrastructure layer, right? It's like the cost to be able to do something like that is, quite significant. So I think the software as a service layer is where the opportunity is for the general masses, if you will. But I still think there's tons of room for innovation on the other layers. We just don't know what they are yet. So.
Okay, so I see some. Okay.
So we don't hear a lot about HTML5. Is it dead or alive?
I can take that. Yeah.
Yes, go for it.
So,
HTML5. Oh,
very familiar with that. I mean, it's alive still in many ways, but it's not going to be the only method of delivering applications. So there are some technical limitations that exist with that don't allow you to do everything you might want to do in a full fidelity way. But it certainly met the needs of most SaaS applications today, I would say. We're at Teradici looking at ways to go beyond that and really give you an even better experience than what you could get with HTML5. But for a web developer, an app developer today, it's a quick way to get up and running and deliver your app to the world. So it's easy. Yeah, it's not going away, but it won't be the only way to deliver a solution or an app.
All right, we have someone here in the middle. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Hi, I'm Mackenzie from Deloitte. Quick question. With the IaaS space, with the SaaS space, there's lots of considerations on the business side that make cloud computing different than just a managed service. For example, on the IaaS side, at times, because it's utilization and subscription costing based, there's times where if you get too much of a peak in that particular month, you could have probably purchased a server and done that without paying. And the payment's actually more than what you would have paid if you just bought the server and did it yourself. On the SaaS side, you may have an application where with your old environment on premise, you could have added a second or third workflow into that particular process in the application, but now you can't because you're subscribing to a software that you're renting. So within cloud computing, there's lots of different business considerations that make it quite a bit different than even a managed hosted service or an on-premise solution. So the question is, how do you address some of the business considerations that change with a cloud computing subscription utilization-based model when you talk to your clients?
Who wants to jump in on that one? So both on it from a cost perspective, cost management, as well as features, additional features that you might need.
Yeah, I think the cost of owning your own hardware is underestimated a lot of the time. And then another point is, if you look at a graph of the cost of cloud, at the moment, Google, Microsoft, and Amazon are all in a race to the bottom. So I wouldn't go out and buy a server today when you look at that graph of where it's going.
Yeah, and it's not just the cost of the actual equipment, right? It's the complexity of having to hire staff to manage that equipment and have the experience to do that. That's actually the bigger piece. What a lot of folks love about cloud computing is someone else is the expert there, and they don't have to, worry about that complexity aspect. So not just the hardware acquisition, but yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that hasn't been discussed around cloud and just this business experience, I think one of the things that the business user needs to understand is when you think about it from a developer's perspective, it's a dramatically different world to develop software in the cloud versus in the traditional environment. And what that means is that the transfer of that experience is quite dramatic. So, in the old days of when we did crystal reports, we used to ship crystal reports every nine months. So I'd ship you a product, and 9 months later, after you complained and whined at me for all the missing features and all that stuff, I would go, oh yeah, okay, we'll get that stuff in there and we'd ship it. Now, we iterate on our product every 2 weeks, and in the Silicon Valley, some of these guys are priding themselves on continuous deployment, right? Where they're literally updating every single day, right? So the change in experience for the consumer on the other end is quite dramatic because now you're getting new features on a daily or a weekly basis. And that's just unheard of in the traditional world. So there's a bunch of costs that you need to factor in of, well, what's the ROI by getting my features daily, right? How does that improve my productivity in my workforce and so on? So, so you kind of look at the costing, of the back end, but what's the ROI on the front end of actually getting a cloud solution provided to you in an innovative, agile way? So I think there's lots of things, but I agree. There's a race to a bottom on the costing side. So my bet would be on the cloud side of this is like, storage is driving to free, compute power is driving to free. Everything's kind of, going down that way.
Ooh,
So
everything's going to be free. How are we going to make
exactly.
money?
Nobody's making any money.
VCs, how are we going to make money? There was a question. Oh, yeah.
Well, you sort of just answered it. I was just. Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. So you just answered, I guess, basically with the race to the bottom, because gentleman's point beside me, there's three different things I'd like to address. One is that when you're locked into a SaaS model, you don't always have the ability to adjust the software that's good for your particular service, right? A lot of SaaS models are very generalized with their APIs and whatnot, but sometimes you just can't do what you want to do on it. The other sort of point was the cost is like, yes, storage is free, support is not. And deploying, you still need an IT crew to deploy a lot of stuff into the cloud. And that's, I guess, where your model is coming in pretty handy, because I can see a need for basically hired staff to manage the cloud. So you're not really going to get rid of your IT team. You're going to have to pay someone else to do that, whether it's Amazon support, Rackspace support, whoever. Somebody still has to manage it, because if you're downscaling inside the office, you're going to have to upscale somewhere else. You always have to shift it somewhere. The other thing is I guess, are you seeing mostly still with the cloud are most of the services with storage? I mean, because I have a hard time thinking that a lot of companies are just going to downgrade their own on-premise high secure items, whatever that may be to them, because you can lock that stuff down. You can lock a USB 6 down. You can lock your entire office down quite well. But can you just see people passing stuff through the net, because the most insecure place is when you start tossing it across the country, and then we split beams, and next thing you know. So I'm just wondering, I guess I brought up a couple points there. I'm not sure.
So I'll address your point on customization. I actually think that there's tons of cloud services out there that are, I think there was sort of the early cloud guys that were relatively inflexible. I think that, what we were doing at Indici was making what we believe to be a very, very flexible platform and user experience, and so there was a lot of customization capabilities in the platform. So I think sort of there's a new age of SaaS architecture that is getting much more customizable. So I know there's been lots of talk in the cloud SaaS world around, you can't customize and those types of things. And I think there were some early, it was like kind of rigid and so on. So I think that there's ways that you can start to do that, architecturally. If the app's been built in a unique way, I think there's ways to do that and extend it. But and obviously you can use APIs as long as you have a robust set of APIs. You can do other things, but like building your own versions of the user experience on top of whatever that platform is, which is obviously possible as well. So I think, again, my eternal optimism is I think you're going to see a shift of that customizable capability that's going to really shift in our world and in the cloud world. So I think that's going to be a big one. And as far as the security stuff goes, I mean, this is sort of the debate of Democrat versus Republican here to a certain extent, right? I mean, you're kind of it doesn't matter which way you land. You could probably get a bunch of experts on the cloud area and tell you all the reasons why it's more secure, and you get a bunch of experts that are on the more traditional side and they'll tell you why it's more secure, right? So I think you're still in that philosophical debate to a certain extent. And I do think a lot of cloud decisions are cultural, right? It's like, well, what do we believe in as an organization? Are we willing to shift there? And yes, there's risks. It's a matter of sort of managing what your risk profile is as an organization. And it may not be the perfect thing for certain organizations in this current time, right? But I think in the future, we're going to get security to a point where it's just going to be more secure and it's going to be the de facto way that we do it. But that will take time for sure. I'm not saying that's going to happen in a year.
Okay, I think one last question over here.
I'd like to ask, are the big guys, Google and so forth, are they elucidating their... Let me repeat that. Are the big guys like Google, Azure, AWS, etc., letting their customers know that their SaaS has limitations? For instance, yesterday Google was down, 6 of their services were out for 6 hours. And when it was Monday morning, 8:15, things aren't working. Drive is basically dead. And Google really doesn't come back and say anything other than check with us in an hour, check with us in another hour. And eventually at 2:30 things start running again. Are there real problems still with SaaS for the enterprise?
Well, I can kind of touch on that. We have this discussion a lot, and I think uptime is sort of is very relative. I think what the expectations that people have in an event like this, and it makes its way onto CNN and Bloomberg and everything else. It's a massive thing when Google goes out for 6 hours. But if you look at kind of what would an IT department face on an annual basis if they were running a document repository, an email service, or whatnot, with their limited infrastructure and what they would have. It's usually much more than that, but it's sort of like this, and we've experienced it directly where we're not even hosting the service, but we recommended Office 365, and then Office 365 has an outage, and we've got 100 customers calling us and saying, "You guys suck. Why did you recommend this thing?" And so I think it's definitely about education. I think it's just maybe it's a good thing everybody's down at the same time and go for coffee, but that it's really what we face. And I think before it wasn't noticed. Like there was these brownouts that were happening all over the place. I can speak to it because we would deal with all those priority 1 issues in our business. But I'll just leave it at that. I think they're very noticeable, these incidents now.
Yeah, and I would add that the expectation when you're now just on a subscription service through one of these big guys is actually a lot higher than it was in your own IT organization, where everyone feels some kind of sympathy when the guy's like down the hall, right, and here's your data center. So the expectation is higher to just always be up. So I think you're going to have to see those large cloud vendors, be more responsive or have a better messaging system for enterprise customers. I know that AWS is certainly more tuned to enterprise customers versus Google is really more on the consumer side and a blend of enterprise. And you're going to see uptime be really important for them. But I mean, in our company, I'll give you a fun example. During this rainy period, we did have a power outage, and we have actually a mix of on-premise and cloud-hosted desktops. Our on-premise desktops went down because the power was out, right, and our data center took a hit. But my cloud-hosted desktop was still up. I didn't have to, go back to my email and load it up again and figure out what I lost. So there's benefits the other way around as well.
Yeah, I can just comment on, I think when I first joined D&B, Microsoft Exchange, I think our Exchange server went down for almost an entire day, and our whole organization was at like a kind of a standstill. Where like, what's going on? So I'd flip the question back and say, well, I don't know, is Microsoft Exchange on premise ready for prime time in the enterprise? You know what I mean? Like, because it's the same thing, right? So it can happen in all worlds. But I totally agree. I think you're going to see a shift in the big cloud vendors around catering more to the enterprise. And I actually think this is what Microsoft's play is going to be in the cloud, is they're really going to pitch their enterprise strength, and they're going to come out with these types of things where they're going to be more communicative. They're going to have better services to communicate with customers on whether their cloud's up or down, and all these things. And that's going to be one way that they're going to try to compete against an Amazon or some of these guys that are more in the lead on the pure public cloud environment. So, but I think the communication definitely has to get better, and it is improving. Like when we use Amazon really extensively, and we're seeing our cloud ops guys are seeing better communication from Amazon, the way they're communicating with us on a regular basis. So that's good movement.
Good. I'm being a VC and an entrepreneur. I'm going to sneak in one more question here for each of you. And that is, if you were to start a new company today or make an investment in a company that's cloud related, what would you do? This relates to one of the questions the audience had, is where's the innovation going to happen? If you could start a startup today, is there something in the SaaS leader? What's interesting out there for you? What would you put your money behind? Who wants to start?
Well, I can tell you what I wouldn't do. How's that?
All right, we'll start with Mark.
The world doesn't need another business intelligence platform. So, I don't know. I'd be giving away all my secrets. I don't know if I can answer that question.
All right. Does anybody want to answer that question?
I would say SaaS. Basically,
something in SaaS.
You got a nice software idea that we've seen that you can explode an app in minutes on the App Store or Google Play. So I would start with apps.
Do you see an area in an application? Yeah,
no,
like,
I
or
can't
in,
say this, Mark.
in an
I
area?
can't tell you that.
All right, okay.
I'll
We have some entrepreneurs here.
I'll give you. So I think in our world, I live in the data world. So I think where we're really shifting towards is there's a lot of push in our world of, there's lots of historical data analysis that happens. So you're always looking in the past and looking at what happened and analyzing that data to help you inform to make decisions in the future. I think the big push in our world is, you've got sort of the big data movement, and there's data volumes increasing. There's no way you can take all that data and do something useful with it in some of the older manual processes. So I think there's a lot of technology around being able to deal with the volumes of data that we're seeing, but also give some predictive future insight. So, you see a big push in my world in sort of the analytics, business intelligence space around predictive. It's kind of a big mantra that people are talking about. Okay. And so I think that would be one area that's kind of interesting. 3 years ago, it was like nobody even wanted to know about predictive. It was like, yeah, whatever. But now it's kind of all the rage, right?
Right. Anybody else want to take Ziad?
Anything that makes developers productive and being able to get code out into the cloud, I think, is very important.
There's still room for that.
Yeah, because everything is becoming software. Like the hardware, no one cares about hardware anymore because you're trying to solve that problem. It's all about how quickly can you create software, scale it up, build a business around that, and iterate. And I think that's where.
Right.
Yeah.
Eugene, do you want to throw out something?
Sure, definitely something in SaaS, because right now I think it's the best time in SaaS. There's so many vendors out there. Each of the vendors have incentives for startups. For example, Microsoft has BizSpark, which gives you $150 a month of Azure credits, completely free, so you can just play around with it. Parse, the platform as a service company, has free tiers, and also Google has recently announced Google Cloud for Startups, and gives you, I think, $500,000 in a whole year to use any of their services. You can play around with anything. So something in that would be.
All right. Ziad, were you going to?
Yeah, it's like the lightning round, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'd say, kind of, less on the innovation side, but really consultancy in this area is going to be so important. And it's on the security front, the managing front, having experts out there that can come in and kind of size your organization and say, hey, this is what you guys should be doing. You should go with AWS for this reason, or you should go with a smaller service provider. That is, I think, a gap that's out there today. And on the
Chris.
more
Opportunity.
yeah, that's right. On the sort of kind of innovative front, I think in the mobility space, there's still a lot of room to improve what's going on there. And I don't just mean apps on a mobile device, but looking at how mobile devices can be used in the cloud space, and making that better. So.
Thank you. And maybe some of the entrepreneurs in the audience will start some of these companies and be the next billion-dollar company in Vancouver. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us tonight. And thank you, the panelists, for your wisdom. And they'll be here for a little while longer.
I'm going to keep this really quick, but I just wanted to mention one thing. We've missed a big gap. And the last comment was the applications of mobile technology, and this leads us right into November. What's coming up in November? It's WAS. Wearable Applications as a Service. Now, this is a space we didn't even talk about, but it's going to be pretty exciting next month. We have Recon Instruments, Dan Eisenhart, coming in to talk about what those guys are up to. And if you're a teacher and you've got students in your classroom writing tests, what does wearable technology like Recon, the heads-up display, and Google Glass do for cheating? I'm interested in that. The next part is we've got Nadeem Kassam also joining us, who is a Vancouver man who sold his first company to MySpace, if you remember those guys. And now he's more recently taken wearable technology, which was originally Pulse Tracer, now Basis Science, sold it to Intel for $1 bazillion or $1 gazillion, or a multiple of both. So we've got a very exciting panel in wearable technology just in time for Christmas coming up next month. You really got to come by and take a look and see what we're doing. Now, one last thing before we go. You've got 60 seconds or more if you would like to make a recommendation on what who should be up here for the upcoming panels. Have a look at VEF.org, upcoming events, and we are awarding a free ticket and a beer to whoever suggests first and an accepted panelist. And this month's winner was Joe Timlin from GrowthWorks. Unfortunately, Joe didn't come, wasn't available today, so we owe Joe a beer, but he can come anytime. Next month, please come by. If you'd like to join up and get a whole season of this, we have sponsorship opportunities as well as VEF membership. These guys are supporting us. Support them. Have a chat with our panelists here. Have a chat with our lightning pitchers out in the lobby. Beer, food. Thank you very much for coming. See you next week.